Yo, what's going on, guys? Chris Barner here, Overtime Athletes. For today's video, what I want to walk you through is the exact warm-up or prep that we perform before we perform our agility sessions, our agility focus sessions, and more importantly, our lateral change of direction, right? And this is gonna deal with all of the movements that we do to prep an athlete to move in that frontal plane or laterally. So as I've kind of evolved as a coach, right? Usually, typically, you guys know that we have our 10, 12-minute dynamic warm-up all of our athletes perform no matter what session. Then after that, what we typically do is we mobilize based on the focus of that session. So if it's linear speed, it might be opening up the hip flexors, hamstrings, things of that nature. If it's lateral change of direction, right, it might be mobility as far as, abduction, adduction of the hips. So after we get through that real quick mobility, dynamic mobility, then what we do is we go into kind of our warm-up or prep for that particular session so that we can ensure better quality repetitions. Now, early on in the off season, when we're developing an athlete, a lot of these movements we might perform for a little bit more volume, get them right, focus on the technique, and just the volume alone becomes the actual work. It lays the foundation for what we want to do later on. So it's important that, for us, that we continue to hammer these throughout the off season. I just want to share with you that quick 5-10 minute warm up that becomes part of our work. That's the prep for our series. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to start from the ground, right? So I want to start with inversion, eversion of the foot, right? And so the athlete is going to perform some basic lower limb movements, right, that are going to focus on pogos. The first one that we're going to do is start from the most basic. It's just going to be a lateral pogo, right? And it's going to be performing working through the feet all the way down 10 yards, all the way back 10 yards, okay? Then from there, we're going to start, if it's a very, if the athletes are a little bit young, we might do this 5, but if they're a little bit more developed, we might start increasing it to 10 yards. But then we're going to go into a single leg, right? The real big emphasis here is making sure that the athlete doesn't use the hip or knee and just focuses on isolating the foot, going all the way down and all the way back. That foot is gonna fatigue, that ankle is gonna fatigue, and it's our goal to try to push through that and continue to keep them. I always say, take what the foot gives you, don't start relying on the hip and knee to push off. Take what the foot gives you, go all the way back. That is a number one staple that we do for any kind of lateral change of direction, is really working from the ground up through the foot and ankle. After we get done that, now depending on what phase we're in, we can start moving to redirecting force, where the athlete's doing some kind of line hop movements real rapidly, single leg, double leg, forward and back. In any event, the goal is to start to, again, work through the foot, work through the ground up. After we do that, we're gonna get into our hip. The first series that we're gonna go through is going to be a basic plyometric, low-level plyometric that all athletes should be performing. And that's going to be the lateral power shuffle, right? So a lateral shuffle is where the athlete's kind of just more or less shuffling really quickly, rapidly with their feet. But a lateral power shuffle, we wanna focus on being able to push off that outside leg, drive as much force as we possibly can in that lateral position. So the athlete's gonna focus on sinking their hips, right? Getting a real big push off and driving into that opposite leg all the way down. Make sure that you're doing both sides. So that's number one in our hip series. Number 2 is gonna be the crossover bound. So the crossover bound, I want the athlete to stay as square as they possibly can, and I want them to drive over. I don't want them to flip the hips or rotate. I want them to keep the toes forward. So I always say, take what your range of motion gives you, right? So if it's right here crossing over, or if you can get here, that's great. In any event, what we want to do is we want to be able to cross over and generate as much force as we can in a bounding-like fashion, right? So the athlete's going to cross over and drive in a more low-level plyometric, right? So again, we're just focusing on that leg crossing over, moving laterally, but putting the angle and where the leg lands and with the position and the range of motion in a different position. Instead of just driving completely out, we're actually crossing over. The last one in this series for the lateral is going to be the karaoke for power. Now, a lot of people do this depending on the sport. You know, I know soccer focuses on rotating the hip and moving more rapidly. You got some of your football athletes, whether they be skill position, focus on knee variability, picking it up and putting it back down as fast as they possibly can, really syncing up the upper body. However, for all athletes across the board, we do it for power. We focus on rotating and we focus on trying to make this more of a bounding-like motion. So the athlete's really gonna rotate, but they're gonna focus as much as they can at being able to rotate those hips and generate force in those more awkward positions. So I say, get as much juice as you can in your step, right? Give me as much force as you can, while also getting as much range of motion that you can in your hips when you do that. So there you have it, the most basic one, but we do this, and then obviously from there we branch off. If it's working with football athletes, again, I might do karaoke, I might do crossover runs, and then we get into our agility. I might progress this in a number of different ways, but all of our athletes across the board who need to move laterally are gonna follow this simple warm-up, starting from the ground up, then getting into our hip series, and then we get into our more agility or lateral change of direction work. So I hope that helps. If you're interested in a full agility program, you can check out the link down below, and I'll holler at you guys next time.